So I was actually lucky enough to get hands-on with some brand new content to Battlefield 6 that wasn't available in the open beta. A big thank you to EA for the opportunity to jump on for about 4.5 hours and play through Mira Valley, Operation Firestorm, and even the brand new game mode that has never been seen before in Battlefield called Escalation. It was all a hell of a lot of fun, and there is a lot to go through, so without wasting any time, we're going to jump right into my first impressions on all of this brand new content coming to Battlefield 6. Now, first and foremost, we're going to start with Mira Valley. I'll get to Escalation at the end of the video just because that is completely brand new, whereas with Mira Valley, we've seen little bits in terms of the PC trailer, for example, where they showed some snippets, and obviously Operation Firestorm, we've seen plenty of that back in the day as well. So starting off with Mira Valley, I've got to say this map was a lot of fun. Now, it is honestly a complete polar opposite to what we got in the open beta. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about all of those maps being pretty small, at least in terms of typical Battlefield maps anyway, and although I really enjoyed that, and I think most people did, there was still a bit of an outcry for some slightly bigger maps, and I was in that same boat as well. I've definitely wanted a bit more variety. I was just a little bit concerned that all of the other maps we were going to get were also going to be that size, and I think that would lead to maybe a little bit of burnout, but they have now obviously confirmed the 4 maps we got in the open beta, they were essentially the smaller ones just to mostly stress test the game, but the rest of the maps we're getting are going to be adding a little bit more variety, and that is definitely the case with Mira Valley, with this being one of the biggest maps in the game. So if you are the type of player who enjoys those more wide open maps in, I guess, more typical Battlefield fashion, at least in more modern day Battlefield, I think some of the older games struck that balance really well, whereas Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, and especially 2042, the maps have kind of always been getting a little bit bigger. And so if you like that type of map, I think this is going to be right up your alley. But also it does have a lot of areas to it where if you're not that keen on these sort of open, bigger type of maps, well, I still think Mira Valley is going to be really enjoyed by the community because the center of the map is still pretty chaotic. There are 2 really big buildings in the middle that are actually a little bit similar really to the sort of central area of Empire State, where there's just a bit of chaos going on at all times within those main buildings. So I thought that the overall layout and sort of the feeling of this map was really solid. Now, it is hard to fully judge. You guys may notice by the gameplay, there were bots in our lobbies. Obviously, being in Australia, there is not going to be 64 Battlefield creators, and so there was probably around anywhere from 12 to 16 of us at any given time, and then the rest of the lobbies were bots. So obviously that means in terms of like the pacing of the map and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to tell how it plays fully because bots just simply don't play the same way that real players do, and generally they do play a bit slower. So this map did feel a hell of a lot slower compared to the smaller maps that we saw in the beta. A big part of that is obviously the size, but also a part of that is no doubt the bots, and so I do feel like it'll feel a little bit quicker once it's in the actual launch lineup, and hopefully we're not playing against bots because I don't think anyone really enjoys that. Now, we played Mira Valley as well as Operation Firestorm on Conquest, Breakthrough, and Escalation. Unfortunately, we didn't get to play Rush, although honestly after the open beta and how Rush wasn't really enjoyed by most people, I'm probably completely fine with that now that I think of it. But we got a good feel for the map in terms of those modes. Realistically, Escalation, which again I'll get to at the end, but that is pretty similar to Conquest, at least at the start of the game, whereas Breakthrough is very different. Now, I really enjoyed Mira Valley when it came to Breakthrough. It did feel a little bit difficult at times for the attacking team. Then again, it's always kind of hard in these creator events because everyone's generally really good, and so it can be really hard for the attacking team to push in when there's a bunch of really good players defending. That is generally always how these sort of preview events go, and so it's pretty hard to tell in terms of the balancing, but yeah, it felt really good in my opinion on Breakthrough, and it did feel really good on Conquest as well. I really like the layout. It reminds me a little bit of like a really big version of Zavod from Battlefield 4. If you guys have played that, you'll know roughly how that feels. It feels pretty similar, obviously a little bit different, but the overall kind of vibe of the map where the center is like the real focal point and there's some big buildings there, that felt sort of similar to how Mira Valley felt, at least in Conquest. Overall though, I am definitely very happy with Mira Valley. Now, we didn't have like enough playtime to absolutely confirm this map is really good. Obviously once it launches, maybe in another 10 hours of playtime, I won't enjoy it. It's not like a guaranteed banger, whereas you play, I don't know, Siege of Cairo, and I pretty much knew on the first match that was an absolute banger of a map. So we will have to wait and see, but at least from first impressions, it definitely felt very enjoyable. Now, sometime tomorrow or the next day, I'll put out a full like live commentary as well of my very first match on Mira Valley. So if you guys want to see like a full match, not a full-on unedited match, but just like the general play of a normal match, then keep your eyes peeled for that video. And if you guys are new around here, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all of the upcoming content. We're obviously getting pretty damn close to launch now, and there is a hell of a lot of content on the way. Now, moving on, we obviously got to play Firestorm as well, like I said, and I mean Operation Firestorm, not the Battle Royale, if that's what it's going to be called. This is the OG map from Battlefield 3 that is a bit of a cult classic at this point, and any of you who played Battlefield 3 will definitely know Operation Firestorm. Now, what I will say about this map is that I think a lot of it is honestly nostalgia. The map is really good, don't get me wrong, but it's not as good as I think I remembered it to be. It is the type of map that I literally just haven't played in like well over a decade at this point. And so I think map design and stuff has definitely evolved since then, and I think now playing it, it's still really good, like I said, but it's not like, I have this map in my memory anyway on like the GOAT levels of Battlefield maps, whereas now having played it, it definitely isn't quite like the best map of all time. So keep that in mind if you haven't played Operation Firestorm in, you know, 10 plus years like me. Keep your expectations in check, because I think a lot of it is nostalgia, and it's probably the same for like all of the maps in those games really. Now, I did really like Breakthrough on this map. It was really chaotic in the first phase, and then it sort of opens up a little bit in the second and third phase, but there are still some like big focal points where there's just a lot of action. So I really enjoyed it on Breakthrough, and obviously back in Battlefield 3 we didn't have Breakthrough, so although it's a classic map, this is kind of like a new iteration in the sense that we've never actually played that mode on Operation Firestorm. As for Conquest, that played pretty much exactly as I remembered. It is really good. It is a very big map, so again, going from all these small chaotic maps to now playing like two really big maps, it is a little bit jarring in just the fact that it's like an overcorrection. We've gone from the smallest maps that we've seen in a while to some of the biggest maps we've seen in a while. And it's not that that's a bad thing by any means. It's just like kind of jarring to get used to. Obviously, with a lot more playtime, it will be completely fine. But just jumping in between, it definitely felt a little bit jarring. Now, as much as I love Operation Firestorm, and like I said, I still really enjoy it after this playtime as well, I do have a bit of a feeling that like new players who didn't play Battlefield 3 probably won't enjoy this map as much as a lot of us who have played it. It is very much an old school map, and like I said, I think level design has sort of progressed a lot since then, and so I got a feeling this is going to be that type of map where, you know, us old school players are going to be like, oh, what a map, I absolutely love it, where the newer players are going to be like, yeah, it's okay, it's not that good. And it's going to lead to a lot of arguments, because obviously a lot of us hold this map in very high esteem, whereas if I'm being honest, like I said, a lot of that probably is nostalgia. It's not as good as I remembered it, but it is still very good nonetheless, and I'm glad they brought this one back. It is an absolute classic, and it's good to see it back in the rotation in a modern day Battlefield. Now, finally, moving on, we did get to play Escalation, the brand new game mode, like I said, and this has never been seen before in Battlefield. So this is completely new to the franchise, and it is a really cool premise in my opinion. So for those who haven't sort of heard how this is going to work, the game mode essentially starts off as Conquest. It is almost identical. I think the actual flags are in slightly different positions, but it starts off, at least on these maps, the bigger maps, with 7 flags, and it is literally just a game of Conquest. Now, once teams start capturing the flags though, there is almost a new way of scoring. So instead of having a ticket count, the team who has the most flags, they will just get this like progress bar, and both teams will get the progress bar, but the team with the most flags will start sort of gaining progress on that bar. And eventually, once it reaches the end, that team will then just score a point. The progress bars will reset, and one, I believe it's one, it may even be 2 of the flags on the map actually get pretty much deleted, making the map smaller and smaller, almost in the same way that a battle royale kind of closes everyone into the center. It's almost like that put into Conquest, where it's getting rid of those out of flags. One team has, I guess you would say, scored a point or a goal almost, and then from there the scoring almost resets. So it's 1-0 at that point, and then it just essentially repeats the same thing. So it is a really cool take on Conquest, really, and it just brings everyone into the center at the end, where there are only, I believe, only 3 flags. I could be wrong, but it just definitely gets smaller and smaller. And keep in mind, we're playing on like the big maps here, and so I think on the smaller maps like Siege of Cairo, for example, this is going to be absolute chaos, and it's almost going to end up a little bit like Breakthrough, where everyone's kind of focused on one main area or a few main areas of the map. And so in a way, it's almost like a mix of Conquest and then Breakthrough, with a little touch of like that Battle Royale element where it all closes in towards the center. Obviously, it's not an actual circle like in a Battle Royale, but you guys know what I mean. It is just trying to sort of bring everyone into the center of the map and make it absolutely chaotic. So this was a really fun mode. It definitely will take a little bit to get used to, because the first game or so I didn't really understand the rules, to be honest. I think most people were the same. It felt like we were all a little bit unsure what was going on, but by the end we all got the hang of it, and yeah, it felt really good in my opinion. Now, the only real critique that I have about this is that it does feel a little bit unbalanced in my opinion, where it does seem like that type of mode where the team that just starts well is almost always going to win. If you start and you know your team captures 5 out of the 7 flags, I would pretty much bet the house that team's going to win, because it is just kind of impossible to come back from that. In a game of Conquest, obviously there's a lot of time where you can come back from that, but in this, because of the progress bar sort of situation, you only really have a small amount of time to capture a bunch of those flags back and then get the progress going for your team instead. And if you can't do that in time, the other team will just score a point. But then once it all sort of resets a little bit, the enemy team still has the majority of the flags as well. And so it does feel like that type of mode where it can really end in steamrolls a lot of the time. I think they were going for a mode that is like really balanced, and it just brings everyone into the end, and it's like a lot of clutch moments. But at least from our playtime, it didn't really feel like that. It actually felt like the opposite, where it was still fun, but it did feel like the team that started well almost certainly was going to win. And so hopefully they can do some balancing there. I'm not sure how they will, because of the way that the mode actually works. It kind of feels like that's intended, even though I know it's not, but like it just feels like that's going to happen unless they fundamentally change the mode. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes in an actual public lobby. Obviously, like I said, 1, there's bots in these lobbies that we were playing, and 2, we're all content creators, so we're all pretty decent at the game, and it just results in like a non-realistic situation where you've kind of got a bunch of absolute sweats, and then the rest of the players are just actual bots. So it is pretty unrealistic, and I think we need to actually see it in public matches in order to sort of get a proper feel for the mode, if that makes sense. But overall, my first impressions when it comes to all 3 of these, I guess, new pieces of content in Mira Valley, Operation Firestorm, and the brand new mode Escalation, is that I'm really pleased with all of it. Operation Firestorm never really needed validation for me. I already know that map is really, really good, so it was always going to be the case in this game. Escalation is pretty much exactly as I expected, just a slightly more chaotic and like crazy version of Conquest in a way. And Mira Valley played really well. It just plays like a lot of the bigger maps in previous Battlefield games, but the best part is it's not like super open like a lot of the 2042 maps. There is still plenty of cover, there's plenty of variety, there are some really close quarters areas, and it just felt like a very well designed map. So overall, I'm very pleased with all of this content. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts down below though on how you think it looks from all of the gameplay. And like I said, there is a lot more content on the way over the next few weeks covering all of this stuff a little bit more in depth, so be sure to keep your eyes out for that as well. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.